My wife, Jessica, 42, and I, 44, have been married for 19 years. We have been together for 25 years and have three amazing kids, all under the age of 14. We built a life together, one that, for the most part, felt strong and secure. But life has a way of testing you in ways you never expect. Back in 2015, Jessica's mother lost her battle with cancer. It was devastating for her, and just when she was starting to adjust to that loss, her father was diagnosed as well. By early 2016, she had lost both of them. That kind of grief does not just go away, it changes a person. Jessica fell into a deep depression. She was not the same woman I married. She stopped finding joy in things she used to love, and no matter how much I tried to support her, there was a wall between us. For the next 2 years, I did my best to hold everything together. I focused on our kids, making sure they felt loved and cared for while Jessica buried herself in work. She became distant, both emotionally and physically. Our intimate life disappeared entirely. At first, I tried to be patient, telling myself she just needed time. But as the months passed, nothing got better. She would come home, barely talk, and go straight to bed. I started feeling more like a roommate than a husband. Since she would not open up to me, I found my own way to cope. After the kids were asleep, I would stay up playing video games. It was my way of shutting out the loneliness. I told myself it was harmless, just a way to pass the time. But deep down, I knew I was escaping. Then, after about 2 years, something changed. Jessica started coming back to life. She became more present, more engaged with the kids, and even started talking to me again. She suggested family outings, showed interest in things she had ignored for so long, and, for the first time in years, we rekindled our intimacy. It felt like I was getting my wife back, and for the first time in a long time, I had hope. But life was not done throwing punches. A year later, I lost my father. He and I had always been close. He was more than just a dad, he was my best friend. Losing him shattered me. Suddenly, I understood exactly what Jessica had gone through. I shut down, just like she had. The grief consumed me, and I could not bring myself to be emotionally available for her the way I should have been. I started retreating into myself, playing video games even more, using them as a distraction from the pain. But no matter how lost I felt, I never stopped loving her. I still told her I loved her every day. I still hugged her whenever I had the chance. I still planned little outings and tried to keep some part of our connection alive. But I know now that I was not fully there. I was going through the motions, but emotionally, I was in survival mode. Around the same time, our sleeping arrangements changed. Our youngest son had a medical condition that required close monitoring at night, so I started sleeping in his room. At first, it was only supposed to be temporary, but it eventually became the norm. I moved my Xbox in there, figuring if I was going to be up anyway, I might as well have something to do. It was just a couple of hours each night before I fell asleep, but looking back, I can see how much it created even more distance between Jessica and me. Then, the world shut down. When COVID hit, everything changed overnight. Schools went remote, and Jessica started working from home. It was an adjustment for all of us, but for her, it also meant stepping into a new role at work. Her job required her to start looking for supplies to reopen her business once restrictions eased, and that meant working closely with another colleague. She was constantly on the phone, always in meetings, always texting or emailing someone. At first, I thought she was just busy. After all, we were all adapting to this new normal. But as the months went on, I started noticing a shift. Jessica became more and more distant. The small moments of connection we had left started fading. She would barely talk to me, barely acknowledge me. She was physically there but emotionally somewhere else entirely. I did not want to believe the worst. I told myself she was just stressed, that work was overwhelming, that she had a lot on her plate. So I did what I could to remind her I was still here. I told her I loved her every day, bought her small gifts just to show I was thinking about her, and tried to create moments where we could reconnect. But no matter what I did, it felt like she was slipping further and further away. I just did not know why. When the 2020 to 2021 school year rolled around, we decided to keep our kids at home for remote learning. Our son's medical condition made it too risky to send him back in person. Between handling their schoolwork, keeping up with daily responsibilities, and making sure everything at home was running smoothly, I was so caught up in the chaos that I did not immediately realize just how much more distant Jessica was becoming. Our intimacy disappeared again. Just like before, she seemed checked out. But this time, I was so busy I did not have the energy to dwell on it. By the summer of 2021, we started feeling the financial strain, so I picked up a side job driving for Lyft to bring in some extra cash. I worked on the days Jessica worked from home so that she could still be there if our son needed anything. It felt like a good system, at least at the time. One night that fall, I picked up a woman from the airport and drove her to a hotel downtown. She spent most of the ride on the phone with a friend, completely unbothered by the fact that I could hear every word. What she said, though, hit me like a punch to the gut. She was telling her friend about how she was meeting up with her affair partner that night. They were both in town for business, and she was excited to finally see him in person again. Then she laughed and said her husband was back home with the kids, probably playing video games, completely oblivious to what was going on. She even mentioned that they had not been intimate in over a year, that he was too busy and distracted to realize she was cheating. I kept my face neutral and acted like I was not listening, but inside, my stomach was in knots. Her words felt like a mirror to my own life. The way she described her husband, it sounded exactly like me. That night, after my shift, I could not shake the feeling. What if Jessica was doing the same thing? What if I had been so caught up in my own world that I failed to see what was right in front of me? So I made an effort. I started being more affectionate, more loving. I was always a naturally affectionate person, but I put in extra effort, hoping to bring back whatever spark we had left. But nothing changed. If anything, the distance between us grew even worse. Desperate to reach her, I wrote her a letter. I poured my heart into it, telling her how much I loved her, that I knew things felt different between us, and that I wanted to fix whatever had broken. But I also made it clear that she had to be willing to work on us, too. When I gave it to her, she promised she would try. But the months that followed told a different story. For the next year, she barely showed me any affection. She had no interest in being intimate, saying her antidepressants had taken away her sex drive. We hardly ever held hands. She never told me she loved me unless I said it first. When we were alone in the car together, she would close her eyes and pretend to sleep, just so she would not have to talk to me. And then, May 4th happened. That day, Jessica had to go into the office, and I had work as well. Throughout the day, I sent her texts, but I never got a single response. It was unusual, but I tried not to overthink it. Later in the afternoon, she finally called me back. I mentioned that I had been texting her all day, and she immediately told me that she had not received them. Her office had bad reception. I accepted the explanation, but told her I could message her through Google Chat since those messages would show up directly on her work computer. Again, no response. That evening, when she got home, we went through the usual routine, put the kids to bed, she took a shower. And that is when something inside me finally snapped. I had ignored the red flags for too long. My gut had been screaming at me, and I had spent too much time convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. But I could not shake the feeling that something was off. So, for the first time in our marriage, I checked her phone. It was May 4th, a big day for any Star Wars fan. May the 4th be with you. I had always been a huge fan of the franchise. Every year, we would joke about it, send each other memes, and make a big deal out of it. But this year? Nothing. When I opened her messages, I saw that she really had not received my texts until she left the office. That part was true. But then, I checked Google Chat. And there it was. The first thing I saw was a string of May the 4th gifts. One she had sent first thing in the morning. But they were not sent to me. She had sent them to him. Not a casual coworker. Not just some friend. But the man she had been having an affair with. Heart pounding, I scrolled through their messages. My worst fears were confirmed. The affair had been going on for nearly 3 years. 3 years. There were endless messages filled with "I miss you" and "I love you." I felt like the biggest fool on the planet. As I kept reading, I learned that this man had moved to Kansas in 2020. He worked remotely most of the time, but still flew into the office for 1 week every month. And during that 1 week, he and Jessica made sure to see each other. All that time I had spent doubting myself, wondering if I was imagining things, questioning if I was the problem. She had been betraying me right under my nose, and I had never seen it coming. Looking back, I guess it all started during their Zoom meetings. While they were working together to get the business reopened, he must have started flirting with her. Normally, when guys flirted with Jessica, she would shut them down immediately. She had always brushed it off, told me about it later, and we would laugh about it. But this time was different. This guy was not better looking than me. I am not some perfect 10 or anything. I have a little bit of a dad bod, maybe a 6 or 7 on a good day, but this guy, he was a solid 4 at best. Yet, for some reason, she flirted back. At first, it was just innocent teasing. Then it turned into casual lunches together. But those lunches quickly turned into something else. She started going to his hotel room during their lunch breaks, lying to me and saying she had to stay late at work just to spend more time with him. I even found a text she had sent to her friend, saying the sex was not even better, it was just the attention she craved. That hit me harder than anything. It was never about love or passion. She just liked feeling desired. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to myself. But I did not confront her. Not yet. I had surgery scheduled that summer, and as much as it killed me to stay quiet, I needed her help during my recovery. So I kept my mouth shut and acted like I did not know. After my surgery, we had already made plans to move closer to family. But as we started the process, I noticed she barely helped me look for houses. It was like she did not care. By October, I could not resist checking her phone again. That is when I realized their affair had actually ended back in June, right before my surgery. Turns out, he got angry that she was spending too much time taking care of me and the kids. He did not like being put on the back burner. And suddenly, all of her behavior started making sense. I had wondered why, after my recovery, she suddenly became more affectionate and loving again. She started initiating intimacy, acting like the woman I fell in love with. Now I knew why. She was not trying to fix our marriage. She was trying to fill the void he left. Then, last week, everything came to a head. We got into a huge argument because she started pulling away from me again, getting distant, barely communicating. It felt like history repeating itself. This time, I was done playing dumb. I lost my temper and flat out told her I knew she had cheated with a coworker. She denied it, of course. Told me I was being paranoid, that I was overreacting. so I shoved the evidence in her face. The second she saw the screenshots, all the anger disappeared from her voice. She stopped yelling, stopped trying to make me feel like I was crazy, and instead, she started crying. I did not care. I turned around and walked out the door. I went straight to my sister's house and stayed there for a while, trying to clear my head. But I came back home for the kids. It was almost Christmas, and no matter how broken I felt, I did not want to ruin the holidays for them. Once Christmas was over, I told her I was leaving again, and this time I would not be coming back. I told her that after the new year, I was filing for divorce. She cried and asked who was going to drive her to work. Who was going to pick her up? Who was going to help with the kids? I just looked at her and said, "Ask your affair partner." That was when she really broke down. Suddenly, she was begging me to stay, saying we could work things out, that we could go to marriage counseling. But I was done. When I file for divorce, I will be seeking full custody. I will also be filing for alimony and child support. 25 years. 25 years of my life, and now it just feels like a waste.